Shifting our focus, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who are in Delhi for the fifth 2+2 ministerial dialogue, delivered opening remarks with their Indian counterparts. Now, India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said that the Indo-US ties are witnessing an upward trend in strategic partnership. Rajnath's statements were backed by his US counterpart, Lloyd Austin, who reiterated that the two democracies were working together for common goals and that two nations had cooperation from the seabed to space. Meanwhile, India's S Jaishankar and his US counterpart, Blinken, mentioned that the relation between the two nations was not just bilateral, but plurilateral. Now, the leaders reiterated that the talks come in the backdrop of the strongest bilateral partnership. In fact, next, Antony Blinken and Lloyd Austin are set to meet Prime Minister Modi this evening.
The India-US bilateral relationship has seen a growing convergence of strategic interests and enhanced defense, security, and intelligence cooperation. Defense remains one of the most important pillars of our bilateral relationship. Your visit to India is at a time when India and US are closer than ever before. In spite of various emerging geopolitical challenges, we need to keep our focus on the important and long-term issues.
In the face of urgent global challenges, it's more important than ever that the world's two largest democracies exchange views, find common goals, and deliver for our people. The scope of our cooperation is vast. As our ambassador is fond of saying, it stretches from the seabed to space. And of course, the strength of our partnership is rooted in the people-to-people ties that are the heart of our long-standing friendship. Our increasingly strong ties give us all hope for the future of this partnership and for our common efforts toward a more secure world.
The dialogue today will be an opportunity to advance the vision of our respective leaders, building a forward-looking partnership while we construct a shared global agenda. A key focus of our discussions today will be the Indo-Pacific region. As we all know, India and US are key members of the Quad, which is scheduled to meet at a leaders level early next year in India. Similarly, we are also engaged in other plurilateral frameworks which reflect our strategic convergences. So I look forward to exchanging views about developments in West Asia, Middle East, and Ukraine, amongst others.
Together, we have been taking very concrete steps to deliver on the vision that our two leaders put forward. We are promoting a free and open, prosperous, secure, and resilient Indo-Pacific, including by strengthening our partnership through the Quad with Japan and Australia. We're bolstering our partnership in international peace and security, and specifically working to promote the world's rules-based order and uphold the principles at the heart of the United Nations Charter: sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence. Our defense cooperation, which we're strengthening again today, is a key pillar of that work.
There are several areas where India and America hope to move forward. Now, one area that has been talked about is energy. When you mean energy, you mean the Indo-US nuclear deal, which got signed a decade and plus years ago and is yet to be operationalized. It's also particularly important in this case because of the crisis, because of greenhouse emissions. That's one. The other kind of energy that is being worked on together is really green energy, which means lithium, which means cobalt, which means nickel, and of course production of batteries, the sharing of technology, and so on. Now that is something China has a head start on, but naturally India and America and other countries are trying to make up, which is why both countries are working together to ensure that at least our children and grandchildren inherit a greener world.
All right, to further understand this development, I'm being joined in by my guest as well, who is Meera Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the US. Ms. Shankar, appreciate you taking the time out and joining us here on Mirror Now to further understand how you view this as well. In fact, what S Jaishankar was pointing out is that the talks come at a time when India-US relations are closer than before. How do you see this, the potential outcome?
That the agenda of the meeting is quite important at this time because the world is seeing so much geopolitical volatility. You had the war in Ukraine, where we have had differences of perception, but we have learned how to navigate those. And now you have the war in Gaza. And here again, the concern is that the war should not expand because India has equities in the Gulf. We import oil from there, being oil dependent, and we have a very large overseas Indian population, which sends a large amount of remittances to our exchequer. So if the war were to spread, you would see a return of people from the Gulf. There would be that whole dislocation. And God forbid that, the supply of fuel gets constrained. So I think both sides have an interest in ensuring that the war does not expand and in also ensuring that there is an effort to address the humanitarian aspects of the conflict. The US has not supported a ceasefire, but has sought humanitarian pauses and to enable aid to come into Gaza, and has also suggested that there should be resumption of a political dialogue along with the G7 countries. It has suggested this, to find a longer lasting solution for the problems in West Asia and the Palestine issue. So I think this is an important issue that both countries are going to discuss. For India, there's also concern that, geopolitical immediacies or crises should not lead to a situation where US attention to the Indo-Pacific begins to waver or get watered down. So we would also seek that reassurance that the deployment of US attention, strategic attention and resources to the Indo-Pacific continues with the same degree of focus as before. And of course, then there's the huge bilateral agenda of following up on what was decided during the visit of Prime Minister Modi and President Biden to India later. So that's a very big agenda.
Ms. Shankar, as you're putting things into perspective for us, what I also essentially want to ask you about the fact that both the nations have reiterated that the two democracies were working together for common goals and that the two nations had cooperation, in fact, from a very interesting perspective of the comment, from the seabed to space. So there's nobody better than you to really talk about how US-India relations have changed over the years.
Yes, I think there's been a significant shift in the India-US partnership. And now it's not just a bilateral relationship, which of course is very substantial and growing in the defense, economic, technology, and people-to-people sectors, but also one which encompasses regional peace and stability, as well as global challenges. So it has become far more strategic in nature. We have seen significant shifts in the US willingness to share defense technology with us, with the agreement for GE and HAL to jointly produce the F414 engine in India. The whole initiative on emerging and critical technologies, which promises to set up a whole ecosystem bringing together not just businesses on both sides, but also universities and research institutions. So that could be a game changer if it is concretized and both countries follow it up in a way which actualizes the promise of this proposal. So very major issues on the anvil and very significant shifts in the India-US relationship.
Yes, Ms. Shankar, and I appreciate you putting that into perspective for our viewers. But for the moment, we're going to have to leave the conversation at that. Thank you very much for joining us on the broadcast.